Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to mix up a limited palette of greys and blacks. And those greys and blacks are going to vary in terms of colour temperature. What we mean by the term colour temperature is how cool or how warm a colour may appear. So the more blue that's added to a colour will cool it down, more browns will warm it up. But there are subtleties between those 2 points that we're going to explore together. I'm going to begin by showing you the colours that we're going to use to make our neutral black. So by neutral, what we mean is it's neither too cool nor too warm. We're going to be using these colours here: burnt umber, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. The first step is to mix our 2 blues together. You might be able to see that one of the blues, phthalo, has a slightly more greenish tinge, and the other one has a slightly more violet colour. So these 2 blues actually vary in colour temperature already. By mixing them together, we're going to create a more neutral blue. So I'm going to use 3/4 ultramarine and 1/4 of phthalo, and let's see how the colour turns out. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Neither warm nor cool. And to make it into a neutral black, I'm going to warm it up with the burnt umber. That's looking pretty good. I'll show you up close. It's a pretty good black. We could add more blue or more brown burnt umber, depending on what kind of effect we want in the palette. A good way to test the temperature of the colour is to mix it with a little bit of the white. So you can see there that perhaps my black is still a little too cool. So I'm going to add a little bit more burnt umber and see how that turns out. I wonder if I've gone too warm now. Let's have a look with some white. Okay, that feels like more of a neutral grey to me now. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to show you how to mix up a whole colour chart of different temperatures of blacks and greys. Okay, now what I'm going to do is play with my neutral black, and I'm going to mix it with various other colours to play with its chroma and test out other different colour temperatures. I'm then going to test those different mixes with some titanium white to see how they hold up and see the truer pigment. So let's start here. I'm going to mix a bit of my neutral black with burnt sienna. Let's see what kind of colour that gives us. Burnt sienna is a beautiful, rich, chocolatey brown. And from that first mix, it looks pretty neutral, but let's test it by adding a little bit of white to see what that looks like. Still a very warm grey. I might add a little bit more. It's lovely. You can see it gets that beautiful mushroomy kind of grey, a beautiful warm grey. Next I'm going to look at burnt umber, which is in essence a much cooler kind of a brown. It's a deeper, darker colour. Let's try mixing it with a bit of the neutral black to see how different that appears from the mix with burnt umber. add some white. It's a much cooler black this time. I'm going to keep going with each one of these colours and then add them to this colour chart and mix them with some white to show you all the various tints you can achieve. Okay, now I'm back and I have completed a colour chart of varying chromas, different greys and blacks that vary in temperature. These are the colours I used at the beginning to make my neutral black, and that's it here. I've actually mixed it with a little bit of medium to show you what it looks like when it's slightly more transparent. And here I've mixed my neutral black with varying degrees of titanium white. And as I mentioned before, that's a really good way of gauging what colour you're going to get from that black, how much it's going to be a cool or a warm colour. In this case, I think that my original neutral black was a little on the cool side. Here I have mixed my neutral black with pure burnt sienna. So that's the colour there in its purity. And here it is mixed with my neutral black and then with varying levels of titanium white. Again, burnt umber, which is the cooler of the two umbers. Here it is in its slight transparency and mixed with the neutral black. And as you can see here, it's actually a better middle grey than my original one. So I think here, by mixing a little bit more burnt umber into my neutral black, I've corrected its chroma. And it feels neither warm nor cool. So that's a good lesson to learn. Here I've used a colour called yellow ochre. Mixed it with my neutral black and varying degrees of titanium white to create again a kind of greenish tone. This kind of colour, this yellow mixed with the blues that are inherent in the neutral black can bring out a slightly more greeny tinge. Here with my beautiful rich ultramarine blue, I've mixed it with the neutral black, and again it's quite a lovely cool shade mixed with white. And finally the phthalo blue, which is a very different blue to ultramarine. You can see again there's a real sort of aqua greenish tinge to the paint, and you can see how saturated that colour is. So with phthalo, you might remember at the beginning we only used a little bit of phthalo in our original neutral black because it's such a potent colour. It will really tint easily. You don't need to use a lot at all. So that's a good rule of thumb. It's easy to get very phthalo if you mix it in equal measure. This will be on canvas, this colour chart. I'd encourage you to make your own. You don't need to use masking or anything like I have, but definitely play with your palette knife, play with these colour temperatures, and learn a little bit about how various blacks will create different tones in your image, and eventually this will become very instinctive to you. Have fun, enjoy making blacks, and I'll see you in class.